the factors that affect capture.
Can I stop you for 1 second? So you had mentioned working in other states where there's water disputes in instances that pumping is way under the sustainable yield. Could you just give us like one example?
Of impacts to groundwater-dependent ecosystems. Well, the most famous example is probably in Nevada at Devil's Hole, where you had pumping and in the middle of a very arid area next to a pool that provided habitat for an endangered pupfish. And the pumping lowered water levels in the pool to the point where it jeopardized the fish were in danger of extinction. And the pumping rate of those wells was what you would expect for a ranching operation or irrigation and agriculture, but it was nowhere near the recharge rate of this very large aquifer. Okay. And that set a lot of precedents, actually, that case. And okay, so if we want to predict whether a well will impact public trust resources, we need to consider the factors that affect capture, and those factors include aquifer properties. So how permeable is the aquifer? How compressible are those materials? And the distance between wells and aquifer boundaries. So how close is the well to the ocean? How close is it to a rift zone? Does it tap a perched aquifer? And also consider the pumping rate. So you'll notice that recharge is not one of the factors that affect capture. So I'm not saying that recharge is not important. Recharge is very important in determining your existing or initial conditions. So for example, how thick the freshwater lens is. But then the impacts of pumping wells are superimposed on top of changes in recharge. And so if resource managers want to affect or change how much fresh water is captured by a well or how much water is removed from storage, they can change the location of a well, the depth of the well, or the pumping rate. But raising or lowering the sustainable yield, that doesn't affect how much a well impacts capture or storage or a public trust resource. Okay, so I want to just suggest that perhaps estimating the sustainable yield is just the first step in determining groundwater sustainability. And then we need to think about these site-specific impacts and how much water is captured by a well. So how do we estimate capture? Well, since RAM was developed, there have been significant advances in simulating groundwater systems. And numerical models provide powerful tools for estimating the rates and timing and location of capture. And this image is of capture zones delineated for groundwater sources on Oahu. So the Department of Health uses numerical models to identify areas that contribute to a well over time. And then these models help the DOH identify risks from contamination and well interference and to protect public health. And then another example are the many models that have been developed by the USGS for Hawaii. This is just an example of a study that used a model to estimate stream flow depletion due to pumping on Kauai. Okay, so in summary, the Kaiwa Aquifer provides drinking water and diverse habitat for culturally important and rare native species, including endangered species, and it supports traditional and customary practices that depend on these ecosystems. And it supports recreational activities that depend on these ecosystems. And so these are public trust resources. And we believe that salinity is at the limits of survivability for certain public trust resources in the park. And we know that rainfall is declining and nutrient pollution is occurring, and that saltwater intrusion is occurring at pumping rates well below the sustainable yield in the aquifer system. And so to maintain existing flows in the park, we need to consider how groundwater withdrawals impact groundwater-dependent ecosystems and protected water rights, and identify where capture will occur and how this will affect habitat and population, and what level of impact is acceptable. And then we can use this information to identify areas where new withdrawals will have minimal impacts on public trust resources. And so I would just like to thank the commissioners for your time today, and the commission staff, and the researchers whose work we cite in the report. And also, I'd like to thank the incredible people who volunteer in the park. So, mahalo.